Roop Rashidi for taking the time out of their busy schedule to grace the occasion and to be a part of the knowledge session on sustainability, circularity, and traceability in the textile industry. It is our privilege and honor to have the leading luminaries of the global textile industry, Dr. Christian Schindler, Director General, ITMF, Professor Thomas Grace, ITA, HN, Mr. Marcelo Durate, Director of International Relations, APRAPA, and our own Dr. KV Srinivasan, Managing Director, Premier Mills Limited, and Vice President, ITMF, and Dr. KK Lalpuria, Executive Director and CEO of Indocount Industries Limited, to offer their insight and vision on the way forward in these key and priority attributes being increasingly demanded in the textile sector. Today's market economy, with disruptions and upheavals on a regular basis, present a very uncertain business environment, further extended by the extremely volatile social and political situation. However, the holy trinity of sustainability, circularity, and traceability are not only consents across geographies, industries, corporation, brands, consumers, and even government. Stakeholders across the world are unified in their demand for clean, ethical, reusable, and traceable products. Supply chain traceability, the process of identifying and tracking a product or material's path from raw material to finished good, is a useful tool to gain and convey information about the components of products, parts, and materials, as well as their transformation throughout the value chain. Traceability can verify certain sustainability claims about commodities and products, helping ensure good practices and respect for people and the environment in supply chains. Traceability is the right way to mitigate sustainability risk. The circular economy allows us to decrease the dependence on resource, that is raw material, water, and energy of limited supply. In a circular economy, there is no end to a product. It goes into the supply chain instead of landfill. The essence of the circularity movement are the 4 R's: repair, recycle, repurpose, for reuse. Another big benefit of the circular economy is that it stimulates innovations and boosts economic growth, and could in the long run enhance the competitiveness of the organization. In addition, the circular economy creates jobs and enables people to save money, cutting unemployment and poverty, as well as reducing the social impact of pollution and climate change. These non-negotiable parameters will stand the test of time and business cycles, having carved the significance to the extent that even the teenagers across the world are leading the voices for quick implementation. Improving transparency and traceability has become a priority for the textile and garment industry to increase its ability to manage the value chains more effectively, identify and address labor and human rights violation and environment impact, combat counterfeits, and handle transactional risk while embracing more sustainable production and consumption patterns. The call for action has also come from like-minded stakeholders, be it countries and the elected governments, corporations and companies, brand and retailers, and of course the end consumers. The time has come for India, one of the largest producers and consumers of textiles and clothing, to take the lead and show the way in setting standards of sustainability. Thus, facilitators and industry bodies in a country have to provide platforms for understanding, discussions, and implementation of the circular, hence sustainable by being traceable by way of sourcing, manufacturing, and consuming. I'm confident that this extremely important knowledge session being organized by Texprocil on its founder day, that is 4th of October 2022, will be one of the series of the initiatives taken to reshape, realign the working of the Indian textile industry in the months to come. I'm sure that today's discussion and session will both be illuminating and stimulating, and take this opportunity to welcome and thank the distinguished guests and speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for the welcome address. Now may I request Honorable Secretary Textiles to inaugurate the seminar by giving his presidential address, sir. So may I request you, sir?
Chairman Texprocil Sri Sunil Padwari ji, Vice Chairman and ED Texprocil, my colleague Ruprasi, Textile Commissioner, distinguished panel of 6 speakers, and ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to inaugurate this virtual seminar on an important subject of sustainability, circularity, and traceability being organized at the 68th Foundation Day celebrations of Texprocil. Let me begin by congratulating the Council on its achievement over 6 decades and putting Indian cotton textile exports on the global map. I'm sure going forward, the Council will redouble its efforts as we work towards achieving an export target of $100 billion by 2030. I also understand that by 2030, most of the world leading importing countries would have put into place stringent regulations in order to ensure compliance with sustainability, circularity, and traceability. These issues are becoming important as the world seeks answers to questions arising out of climate change and impact on the environment and planet as a whole. The textile and clothing industry is a very important segment of the world economy, which includes many developed nations, and the textile industry the world over is currently facing the emerging challenges of sustainability, circularity, and traceability. We all know that textiles have become the fabric of everyday life, affecting us in various ways, whether in the form of clothes, protective medical equipment, buildings, vehicles, etc. Considering these issues relating to impact on the environment have become very crucial. In fact, these issues are now impacting consumer behavior and buying decisions. Accordingly, leading brands, retail stores are concerned about the issues relating to sustainability, circularity, and traceability. As we all know, sustainability aims to prevent the depletion of natural or physical resources so that they remain available for the long term. Circularity is understood in terms of recycling of fibers with the intentions of curbing waste and disposal of used garments and textile materials. Traceability as a concept has come up in the light of restrictions being imposed on sourcing of raw materials like cotton, etc. Recent US action curbing use of Xinjiang cotton on account of use of forced labor has brought sharp focus on this aspect. As a significant producer and exporter of textiles in the world, India must also fast-track its plans to develop its textile and clothing industry to meet the growing requirements of sustainability, circularity, and traceability, as these forces are heralding the dawn of a new age global textile ecosystem. The current very low reuse and recycle rate means that more textiles are being thrown away than ever before. This requires more land, water, and fossil fuels and leads to increasing pollution of the air, water, and soil. Globally, the annual cost to consumers of throwing out clothing that they could continue wearing is estimated to $460 billion. The use of hazardous substances in textile processing have to be eliminated, and resources have to be used much more efficiently with a shift towards renewable sources of energy and materials. The lifespan of clothing and other textile products have to be considerably increased, along with radically improved recycling when materials reach their end of life. Sustainable and circular textiles thus require entirely new business, but will deliver an industry that benefits business, society, and the environment. As far as traceability is concerned, onus is now on all suppliers across the value chain to trace the entire chain of raw materials, intermediary in the final goods being produced. This may entail investment of time as well as allocation of additional financial resources. I am sure that the knowledge imparted through the presentations today by Indian as well as overseas speakers will throw sufficient light on how we need to move towards and engage and align with the sourcing requirements that will spring in future. I'm sure that the discussions today will also help the government in fine-tuning its policies. I once again wish to congratulate Texprocil on its 60th anniversary and wish all success in its future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your inaugural address, sir. With your permission, sir, we'll move forward and we will. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We come to the technical part of our session today. I am Dr. Siddharth Rajgopal, the Executive Director of the Cotton Textile Export Promotion Council, and I will have the privilege of moderating this very important session. Just to sort of recap what has so far been said by our Honorable Chief Guest, the Secretary Textiles, and also the Chairman, sustainability, circularity, and traceability are currently, in fact, they look like some buzzwords dominating the textile industry worldwide as we sit here today and look at them. However, when it is reported that the textile and clothing industry is the second largest polluting industry. And when they say a truckload of textiles is landfilled or incinerated every single second around the world, it is time to sit up and take notice. The European Commission, in fact, in a paper published on March 30th, 2022, reports that while global textile production almost doubled between 2000 and 2015, the consumption of clothing and footwear is expected to increase almost 63% by 2030. The expected impact of this, what they call a relentless consumption on scarce resources, water, energy consumption, waste disposal mechanisms, and the climate as a whole is what has led to a clamor for the SCT in the textile industry as we stand today. In fact, if one understands the current thinking in the European Commission and other leading organizations in the world, in the developed world, a tsunami of regulations may come into force in the next 3 to 5 years, seeking clearer information on textiles, the possibility of a digital product passport, a new design requirements for textiles, setting mandatory minimums for the inclusion of recycled fibers in textiles so as to make them longer lasting and making them easier to recycle. Addressing issues relating to unintentional release of microplastics from textiles and the need for an extender producer responsibility in the textile value chain. Now, these are all very, very important and far-reaching consequences of what are likely to happen. And this is not, we're not trying to sort of scaremonger people here, but the reality will stare us in our face as we move during the third part of this present decade. And 2030, as our secretary mentioned, will be not only a time period by which most of these countries will possibly have almost a set of regulations trying to control the impact of on the climate and on the resources of what is called as the disposal of our textiles. Now, to understand all these issues involved and the direction that textile trade is expected to take in response to these emerging challenges, we have a galaxy of national and international speakers today with us, and we are very grateful to Dr. Schindler of ITMF, who was instrumental in organizing the participation of our overseas speakers, Mr. Marcelo Duarte and Mr. Vego. But at the same time, internally also, there has been tremendous concern expressed by some of our leading exporters, Dr. K.V. Srinivasan, who's MD of Premier Mills, past chairman of Texprocil, and also the vice president of the ITMF and the incoming chairman of ITMF, and Shri Lalpuria ji of Indocount, who have all really flagged these issues, and in their own way, in their companies, they have started working towards achieving these goals. So without much ado, may I request Dr. K.V. Srinivasan, the MD Premier Textiles, and also the Vice President of ITMF, to give an overview of his introductory remarks and how he sees the situation panning out. Just for the record, Dr. Srinivasan is a BTech in Textile Technology, and he did his MSc in Textile from the University of Manchester. And in '86, he obtained a PhD. He has been a William Jones Scholar, and he has also been a University of Manchester overseas research student, well-read, and not only in terms of theoretical knowledge, but also practical implementation. Dr. Srinivasan has been running a very successful company, the Premier Textile. Now, may I request him to give his introductory remarks, sir? How do you see this entire issue panning out in the world trade in textiles and also the Indian textiles industry? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajagopal. Mr. Upendra Prasad Singh, Secretary, Ministry of Textiles, Government of India, Srimati Roop Rashi, Textile Commissioner, Mr. Sunil Patwari, Chairman, Texprocil, Mr. Manoj Patodia, Immediate Past Chairman, Texprocil, Dr. Schindler, Director General, ITMF, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to start by congratulating Texprocil on its 60th Foundation Day. Texprocil is one of the oldest export promotion councils in India. And over the last 7 decades, it has gone from strength to strength in promoting export of textiles from India. And it has done an incredible job. And we look forward to it growing further in the years to come. To commemorate its 60th Foundation Day, I think Texprocil has chosen a very important topic, sustainability, circularity, and traceability. Mr. Manoj Patodia has explained the relevance and significance of this for the Indian conditions, and I think Mr. Singh has also explained how this is going to be an important benchmark going forward in the future, both in the domestic market as well as in the international market. As Mr. Rajgopal said, these three are the key buzzwords in the textile industry today. Maybe a few years ago, we did not even know of the importance of these words, but today I think the textile industry is looking seriously at sustainability, circularity, and traceability. Also, I would like to point out that perhaps the textile industry is one of the major industries which has played a significant role in looking at sustainability and working seriously on sustainability. While this gives us a good head start to go with, I think going forward, a lot more focus and emphasis is needed on it, not only on sustainability, but also on traceability and circularity, as all these are interlinked to each other and they will all form part of the larger textile circle. At the recent ITMF conference in Davos, there were a few weeks ago, there were many interesting papers and discussions on these topics. I'm sure Dr. Schindler will brief us, will give us an overview of what happened there. And some of these eminent speakers are with us today, and this gives us a great opportunity to listen to them and understand on what is the current field trends and what is the requirements going forward in the textile world. We have some very interesting presentation by experts. Mr. Lalpuria of Indocount will talk on the traceability of Indian cotton. Interesting presentations on sustainability, both in digitization as well as in cotton production, by Professor Gries from Germany and Mr. Duante from Brazil. Both of them, I would like to emphasize again, are experts in their respective fields, and I'm sure there will be a lot of takeaway points which the participants today will be able to understand and appreciate going forward. With these few words, I would request that we proceed with the presentations. Thank you, Mr. Rajgopal.
Thank you, Dr. Srinivasan, for your preliminary remarks. Now, sir, we're getting into the substance of this. May I request Dr. Christian Schindler, the Secretary General of Director General of ITMF, which is based in Zurich. It conducted a very successful conference on these three subjects of sustainability, circularity, and traceability. And just for the record, Dr. Schindler is well known in India now. He has been traveling and he has been interacting with all our members. He studied economics at the University of Freiburg in Switzerland, from where he graduated in 1994. In 1998, he joined the Federation of German Wholesale and Foreign Trade, BGA, and was part of that secretariat. Between 2001 and 2004, he studied at the Institute of Economic Policy at the University of Cologne, where he wrote his thesis and obtained a doctorate in 2004. Dr. Schindler was appointed economist of the ITMF in 2004 and was subsequently appointed as Director General or elected as Director General in 2007. Dr. Schindler is a very well-informed man who gets information from around the world. Some of his papers and his presentations are eagerly awaited by a lot of people across the world, because a lot of insight is made available by him and his team. So may I now request Dr. Schindler to sort of take us forward and give us an overview of what exactly is happening in this world in the terms of sustainability, circularity, and traceability. Thank you, sir. Dr. Schindler.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajagopal. I already share my slides if this is possible. I think you see them now already. First of all, let me thank you very much for the kind invitation. I would like to thank His Honorable Secretary Textiles, Government of India, Mr. Upendra Singh, to join this session and to give this session the importance it deserves. Also, Ms. Roop Rashi, Textile Commissioner, Government of India. Thank you very much also for the kind invitation to Mr. Manoj Patodia, immediate past president of Texprocil. And also nice to meet the new president, Mr. Sunil Patwari of Texprocil. And I'm very glad that also Dr. Srinivasan and also Mr. Lalpuria, CEO of IndoCount, joins us today, as well as my friend also Mr. Duarte from Abrapa in Brazil. Already at my last presentation 2 months ago in Delhi at the CT ATEXCon conference, I emphasized, as mentioned before by Dr. Rajagopal, that there will be a tsunami of new regulations coming up that will impact all of our industry. We had a long presentation at our conference in Davos 2 weeks ago by the Director General of Euratex, who outlined all the initiatives and what the implications are for our industry, both for the producers of textiles in Europe, but also for anyone who's going to export to Europe, who have to comply with all the regulations and all the requirements. I will not drill down on that now today, especially. I leave that for another webinar. But I would like to share a few takeaways from my side that will not be covered today by other speakers. I'm glad that Mr. Lalpuria will talk about traceability. I'm glad that Mr. Duarte will talk about traceability also within the context of sustainable cotton production in India. And of course, I'm very pleased that Professor Gries will share his views also on sustainability, but also on cooperation, which is really not only a catchword in today's discussion, but which is essential to make progress both in terms of innovation of products as well as innovation of processes, and in finding solutions for different problems that we are all faced with in terms of sustainability. With that, let me start my presentation. If you see my slides, please confirm quickly, and then I will carry on. So I will talk about the takeaways from the ITMF annual conference.
Dr. Schindler, excuse me. May
Yes?
I request you to please make it a full screen format?
I try to do that, and I hope that I don't lose it. You know, on my other.
Okay, fine.
Well,
this slide is fine. The earlier slide was a little too small.
I'll do it like this.
Yeah, okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. And then I will also talk about the latest results of the 16th ITMF Corona survey, which was conducted just last month, and which is interesting to see and also to feel where the industry is heading in the different regions, in the different segments. So the takeaways from the ITMF annual conference. Well, let me start with what we always start with at our conference, which is the so-called fiber session. And we have presentations from the cotton as well as from the man-made fiber industry. And we also have somebody from Wood Mackenzie who is giving us an overview of the overall development, which is very much appreciated all the time. And the slides he shared with us are the next 4, which are, I think, well known to us, but it's important to just realize, you know, that this trend is not going away anytime soon. The trend that I'm referring to is that fiber consumption is going to increase in the next few years for very obvious reason, macroeconomic reasons, which are a growing GDP and still a growing world population, which in the last 20-30 years has led to a growing middle class across the world, which is consuming more and more textiles. We have learned that the consumption of fibers increased really tremendously, especially in the last 20 years with the upcoming of fast fashion, where more and more textiles were produced and less textiles were actually worn, with the result that more and more textiles were actually finding themselves in landfills or were incinerated, which caused to the problem of waste, which we might turn to an opportunity, as I will refer to later on. The strong increase of fiber consumption is actually coming from polyester. You see how polyester has increased its market share in the last 40 years. It's now at around 55%. Cotton share at the same time decreased, as we are all aware of, to around 25%. And the other fiber types have been more or less constant in the last few years. The exception is maybe polypropylene and cellulose, which in combination with cotton might play a more important role in the near future, as we will see later on. The next slide is actually the distribution within polyester production, and we see that especially textile filament has contributed immensely to the growth and success story of polyester in the last 20 years, and it will continue to increase also in the next 20 to 30 years. Its share is around 68% already, with the polyester short staple fiber comprising around 26% of polyester fiber production for textiles. Industrial filaments are a small share, as well as the other filaments. This brings us to one more slide, which is about where production is taking place. And you see that China was and is and will remain the dominant producer of textiles, followed by the rest of Asia, where of course India plays a very important role, whereas Europe and the Middle East and Africa, as well as the Americas, will not play a major role also in the future. In Europe, maybe with the exception of Turkey, where some major investments are taking place also currently. Well, this is just a background I think that we all have to be aware of, and that is important to know if we are going forward regarding our strategy as a company, as an industry, as a country. Now, coming to sustainability, we have heard it before. There's an enormous push by brands and retailers, especially the well-known brands and retailers, for sustainability. I've just highlighted H&M Group sustainability goals: 100% recycled or other sustainably sourced materials by 2030. I mean, this is really a message we all have to really digest. You know, recycled materials. So there will be literally no virgin polyester anymore in their offerings. And in addition, they want to be climate positive throughout our value chain by 2040. And H&M is not the only brand that is asking or aiming for such goals. All the major brands, whether it's IKEA, Adidas, Puma, they all have similar goals that we all have to be aware of. And this will be a big challenge for our industry to comply with these targets, with these goals in our own production of the products that they are going to source from us. IKEA, another example, and I just also share this slide with you that was presented in our conference. So they will basically, just like we heard before, stop virgin fossil-based products. They will maintain, of course, natural fibers, virgin cotton, animal-based fibers, as you can see here. And what they will replace the virgin fossil fibers with are renewable and recycled fibers. And this shift is very important for us to understand and to adapt rather sooner than later. Whatever that means, that could mean that we either start recycling ourselves, that we find the necessary partners. That's where cooperation comes in. That is not only a cooperation with your direct suppliers and direct customers that might even mean cooperation with partners along the whole value chain, whether it's brands or whether it's startup companies, fiber companies, recycling companies, that we all have to be considering. IKEA's look at manufacturing of the future, and that's, I think, is what I just referred to already to a certain extent, is that by 2025, so that's only in 2 to 3 years, IKEA will not basically source from companies that are still using fossil fuels in their direct production. So companies that are using coal or oil on site for whatever purpose will have a very difficult time to remain suppliers of IKEA in the future. And by 2030, you see that IKEA is asking their suppliers to only use renewable energy sources, whether it's their own energy, renewable energy, or whether it's the energy from the grid. Also, the energy that they buy has to come from renewable sources. And that's only 7 years from now. So this is just a snapshot of 1 or 2 brands and retailers, but that are defining to a certain degree and extent the manufacturing of the future. Now, an important topic throughout the conference, and that's part of what I just referred to, is of course the circularity. Again, pushed by brands and retailers. And you see here the circularity, the circular economy principle. We have some raw materials, but then they enter the circular process, and there should only be a very minimum residual waste that lands on landfills or will be burned or incinerated. We are all aware of that. And what does this mean? We have heard this before. This means for apparel production that we have to reduce our input material as much as possible. I think our industry did very well. So already in the past, being a very efficient producer, but this has to be now more focused on environmental aspects that might have been neglected in the past. The reuse will play an important part also, which means the resale of garments and products, or the rental of garments and textiles that has become more and more fashionable, especially since the advent of digital tools, the internet platforms, where products can be easily resold and rented. And of course, recycling will play a major role, as we have heard before. And I will come to that in a second. Now, reuse, resale, and rent. Just a few figures. Here you can see, and that's also a slide that was shared by Mr. Ingel from Unify, polyester producer and a recycler of polyester bottles in the US. The US fashion resale market is now expected to reach already 76 billion by 2025. So that's not too far away, and this is a growing market. The same is true for secondhand apparel, which is growing 11 times faster, of course, from a very low base than the primary market, apparel market. And Google searches for secondhand were up by 80% in 21 versus 2020. So this is just to underline the importance really that circularity will play in the future and is already playing, and it's important that we start to realize that and act accordingly wherever we have or see possibilities and opportunities. Now, we have heard these numbers before, just state them again. Did you know that textile greenhouse gases are representative for 10 to 15% of global carbon dioxide emissions? Textile water pollution, 20% of global industrial water. Polyester textile waste, only 1% is actually recycled until today. And we have the polyester textiles that end up in landfills with a degradation time of 1,000 years. And of course, the polyester microfiber pollution. that is responsible for 35% coming from actually clothing. Given that as a background, we are aware that we have to act now. It's high noon for our industry to act. Here are some other numbers that underline that we have to realize that we are not doing business as usual anymore. Whether it's the lack of textile to textile recycling, I just mentioned that before. The trash, we heard that before. I think somebody mentioned, I think Dr. Rajagopal, the equivalent of a garbage truck of textile waste is burned or landfill every second, according to Alan MacArthur Foundation. And we are producing more and more fibers, as you can see here. We saw that before. By 2030, 146 million tons of fibers will be produced or will be needed. The question is where it will come from. We will see that in a second, and hopefully a big share will be from recycling. Now, we had actually, and that was not planned, but it just emerged, many chemical recycling technologies that were presented in Davos at our conference. And I will not go into the details. It would take too much time. Sometimes it's very technical, but I just want to refer them to you. Refer to them and just mention and highlight them. And you might want to look up what exactly they are up to and how this works, what the timelines are. I'm just going to share a few slides with some important figures. So the first one is actually Worn Again technology. Originally, this startup comes from the United Kingdom, but has now teamed up, cooperated with the Swiss textile, the Swiss chemical and machinery company called Sulzer. Sulzer Chemical, which is a subdivision of Sulzer, and they are working on recycling polyester textiles and polycotton textile blends. They do that in cooperation here in Switzerland with different partners, whether they are spinners, whether they are sorters, whether they are chemical companies, and coordinated under or by Swiss Textiles, the Swiss Textiles Association. And you can see that they are going to use worn textiles that are not for resale or rental, but that will be actually recycled to cotton dissolution and also to polyester flakes that will be available again to produce either polyester fibers or cellulosic fibers made from cotton or in this case from cotton textiles or cotton poly textile blends. Then we had a second company that is also, that's based actually in Switzerland, but with production in Austria. It's called IQ Ionic, the world's first climate, and they claim that, positive cellulosic filament. You can see here some important characteristics of this filament that they are going to produce, whether it's with regard to tenacity, elongation, shrinkage, yarn count, filament count, etc., and all the properties that this filament, cellulosic filament, has, in addition to be, of course, 100% vegan. So where does this feedstock for this cellulosic filament come from? And there are actually three sources in the future: post-consumer cotton textile waste. This is a closed loop recycling with textile to textile, producing a so-called Circulose pulp. This is a strategic partnership with the Swedish company Renewcell that is actually providing the feedstock to do so. So Renewcell is producing recycled cellulosic products from different sources, partially from virgin material, but mainly from recycled textiles. Then we have pre and post-consumer sources for cellulose from unvalorized agri-waste. And now this is, of course, a very important and enormous potential, as you can see here. They can use banana peel and steam with up to 60% of cellulose content. And there's banana production of 100 million tons per year. A peel is up to 40% of this total weight. Even more volume provided is from sugarcane waste, with up to 40% of cellulose. And here the number is even more staggering. 1.9 billion tons of sugarcane production, up to 15% of total weight are leftover fibers. And other agri waste material can be, for example, coffee ground with up to 30% cellulose content. And the third one is actually feedstock for this filament is Biotech Cellulose, a production of the highest quality cellulose by biotech processing. Basically, they are growing their own cellulose material and feedstock. Currently, they are upscaling with partners, again, cooperation, proprietary farming method to commercial capacity. They are going to produce their first so-called future fiber factory in the next 2 years with a capacity of 30,000 tons per year, requiring an investment of 300 million. They're going to use renewable energy, 100%, and it's a closed loop process with no CO2 emissions, but actually generating CO2 certificates, carbon credits, which can be sold on the markets. So a very interesting and promising technology. We all have to wait and see, you know, how this really plays out when they are scaling up. But it's 30,000 tons a year. I think he said the same, the number himself. He would need around 2,000 of these companies to meet the potential that there is in the market. Yeah, I think this is just a repetition of what I just said. This brings us to another company, which is Infinited Fibers. They also presented there, and they are recycling trash textiles as well. They are turning waste into a source of joy, and here it's actually all again cotton-rich textile that is converted into a cellulosic fiber called Infinma, and therefore fed back to the circular process. They are also planning a first factory of 30,000 metric tons, which is enough to produce 100 million t-shirts also in the next few years. They are cooperating, and again, it's important to mention that with fashion and apparel companies that have already signed up to take up their production so that the investment is actually already secured, and the company can really scale up with a full order book in the next 2 to 3 years. Then we had another, actually, a company from Hong Kong that is that won one of the ITMF Sustainability Awards, which is called the Green Machine. And I will not go into the details, but again, here they are developing a process where blended post-consumer textiles are recycled, producing all sorts of separated material that can be reused for the production of new textiles, whether it's cellulosic fiber, whether it's recovered protein fiber, for the use of polyester similar fibers. A very complicated process. Here are some photos that you see that this is already in the scaling up process, producing 1.5 tons at a site in Indonesia. So this is happening, and behind these initiatives are again very often brands and retailers. In this case, I think it's also H&M that is supporting this research project. And of course, they are teaming up with textile producers in the various countries, and I would like to encourage all of our industry leaders to look into such cooperation possibilities in the near future. We also had a presentation about mechanical recycling of cotton fibers. Mechanical recycling is already industrialized more or less, and companies like Rita in Switzerland are looking into how more and more recycled cotton fibers can be used not only for rotor spinning but also in ring spinning. So also these machinery companies have realized that in the future recycled fibers will play a more and more important role, simply because the retailers and the brands are demanding for it. They are at the currently they are experimenting with a ratio of 80 to 20% virgin versus post-consumer short staple fibers, and their aim is of course to use 50% of recycled materials for ring spinning. Recycled materials, of course, from mechanically recycled processes. The ones from the chemical recycling are not a problem because they can be cut in the necessary lengths, at the necessary length. Well, these were, I think, some highlights from the ITMF conference with regard to circularity, sustainability. I leave traceability to the other speakers and cooperation. Now I quickly guide you very quickly through the results from the 16th ITMF Corona survey. The global business situation in September, as you can see on this slide, was on balance -3 percentage points. So on the left-hand side, you can see that 26% of participants said that they are in a good business situation. Still 44, a big number, are in a satisfactory business situation, but the number of poor participants increased further now to 30%. So the balance between good and poor is the balance, which is 3 to 4 percentage points. And you can see it's only a little lower than it was in July. The expectations have actually improved in negative territory from -9 percentage points to 8 percentage points, which might come as a surprise. Some people might have thought that this has actually deteriorated further, but there seems to be the hope that it's not going to turn even worse in the next 6 months. Companies that think that business will remain unchanged is still at 36%. Now here is a breakdown to regions and also to segments. This is very much the same situation as it was in July. The regions in Asia are struggling much more than the ones in North, Central America and South America. North America and Central America were holding up quite well. Of course, they also feel now that inflation is hurting consumers. South America, a big surprise to many people that are not familiar with South America, especially with Brazil, is a special case. It's a little bit an isolated region, especially Brazil, but they are lagging our experience and have been now coming out of the pandemic only in the last 6 to 12 months, and are very optimistic regarding the future of the country with the new government that might be coming in. The elections just took place yesterday. There will be a second round. Let's see. When you look at the segments and the business situation there, we see that the spinners are in the most difficult situation with -93 percentage points. Only the textile machinery producers are still finding themselves in a good position with +90 percentage points. They have, of course, a long order backlog. Whether order income is increasing is doubtful, but the order backlog certainly helps the textile machinery producers. Downstream, everyone is negative also, but not as much as the spinners in particular that are caught between high fiber prices on the one side, especially cotton, and very, very little demand from the downstream. Expectations are as they are, especially in East Asia and Europe. Europe with the energy crisis is not a big surprise. East Asia with China still under a zero COVID policy is still struggling. Africa is more optimistic, so still optimistic. South America, North America. Fiber producers remain negative. Spinners hope for a better time. It can't get worse, one might be inclined to say. And home textile producers are still trying to find their ground after having experienced a very good 20 and 21. The inventories of many home textile brands retailers have grown too much that orders are not coming or reaching the home textile producers. Almost the last slide, order intake, order backlog. You see the global order intake situation has now turned into a negative territory, which is not a surprise. I think we're all aware that order intake is coming down. You see the regions, it's very similar to the business situation and very similar also to the respective segments. Order backlog, we have seen that especially textile machinery producers are still on a very long order backlog. In other segments, order backlog is coming down or was coming down, especially for spinners. It's just 1 month, as you can see here. And on the left-hand side, you see the global order backlog is really coming down from a peak of 3.1 months to 2.7 months. Now, last slide, really the global business situation, expectations, and what are the biggest concerns? Well, high raw material prices still with 54%. Weakening demand is coming down slightly, but it's still 51%. High energy prices are really now hurting the entire textile value chain, some more than others, especially those in Europe are struggling more than those in Asia or in the Americas. And inflation, which is, of course, the other side of the same coin of high energy and high raw material prices. Geopolitics is also actually on the rise, no surprise after what we have seen in the last 6 months. And with that, I close my presentation and are available for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Schindler, for a very comprehensive and insightful presentation. Secretary, sir, would you like to make any observations at this stage, sir?
No, not now.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So we proceed further. Questions we'll take later once we are through with some of our presentation. Thank you once again, Dr. Schindler, for really illuminating us and enlightening us about the kind of development that will take place. Includes efforts at replacing polyester fiber over a period of time with cellulosic fiber. Well, that was a very fascinating presentation made by Heinke, and their efforts and the factories that they are putting up. Now we proceed and move on. May I now request Shri K.K. Lalpuria ji. He is the Executive Director and CEO of Indocount Industries. For all of us, Shri Lalpuria is a qualified chartered accountant, and he has been with over 39 years of experience in the textile sector. He has held senior position, board level positions in companies like Wellspun, Bombay Dyeing, Pratibha Syntex, before joining Indocount Industries. He is currently the Executive Director and CEO of Indocount Industries. His expertise includes planning strategic growth of organization, developing joint ventures, mergers and acquisitions, increasing overall contribution in value chain, human resource development, and customer relationship management. One of the key points which has emerged is Mr. Lalpuria is also very actively involved with sustainable production of cotton in his own company, and he has really hands-on experience dealing with the homegrown farmers and homegrown cotton. So with these few words, Lalpuria ji, may I request you to make your presentation?
Thank you, Siddharth ji. And first of all, congratulations to Texprocil on their Founders Day. And I would also comment that the council just does not represent cotton textiles, but the word is synonymous in the global textile space as a representative of Indian overall textiles. So whenever you look at any exhibition or fairs or worldwide, the name Texprocil crops up to everybody's mind. So you have, as Texprocil has done a wonderful job into carrying the Indian flag worldwide for textiles, particularly. Our chief guest, Sri Upendra Prasad Singh, the Secretary Textiles, Srimati Roop Rashi ji, Textile Commissioner, Sri Patwari ji, Chairman, Texprocil, Sri Patodia ji, the immediate past chairman. A good afternoon to all the dignitaries and ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for providing me the opportunity on this important subject, which I think we all should introspect and see that how we can address this as soon as possible to really create, a perceived value of Indian cotton worldwide. So it's just not the traceability which we would address with it, but also it will be an initiative towards the direction of, branding Indian cotton worldwide and creating that value, because so far we have not been able to create that value for Indian cotton, even though we are producing quite a versatile, cotton fiber for all these years, whether it is short staple, whether it is medium staple, whether it is large staple. Even I wonder, when at certain times it excites me that why not we call it an Indian Pima, like US called it Pima, and why we do not call it Indian Pima. We have to just name and brand it. And I think the government has taken that initiative and focusing upon, this as a brand. Now, the world is evolving, as we all see, rather post-pandemic. We have all become more aware in our life and lifestyle. And a lot of things are coming to our mind. And the four buzzwords which are being, spoken about in the industry sector is about the awareness factor, the accessibility factor, the affluence factor, and the attitude of the customer factor. So these words are going to decide upon who are successful in the consumer world out there selling their product globally. And I think as what Dr. Srinivasan mentioned, sustainability and circularity and traceability are all interlinked and they complement each other. And what as Dr. Schindler means that the tsunami of regulations which are going to happen, because suddenly the world has recognized the fact that the climatic changes is putting a lot of pressure on not only the life and lifestyle of people and to their livelihood of the people and the community at large, but it is also destroying resources in some of the places where natural resources are meant to be utilized for human consumption. In one of the papers I read in published by Hindustan Lever, as a world today, we are using 1.5 times natural resources as what we are supposed to want. And by 2050, we'll end up using 3.5 times the natural resources. So just imagine the way we are looking at the disaster and how we will live our world for the next generation. So we all need to really worry about the way how we produce the goods. And when it comes to sustainability, always we should see that it's not only about the carbon emission, which was earlier being defined in the Kyoto Protocol, but it is also about the product. It is also about the process. It is also about the people. It is also about the emission. It is also about the environment. So it has to have a 360 degrees, look and observation to see that how we address that at each phase of our not only production, but also consumption. Now, if we look at, you see, traceability, which is today's my subject, in order to emphasize upon it, is that we think that this is a risk management tool. If you really ask me from a management perspective, I would define it as a risk management tool, and all corporates or companies should consider this as how they will be addressing this as a risk management tool. As what I have spoken earlier about, that the rapid changes which are evolving around in the textile space are really putting in a lot of pressure on the supply chain. And today's consumer is demanding, where the product is coming from, what is the origin, what is the value proposition which the brands and retailers are providing, is it authentic, is it good enough for its consumption, and all those questions are, coming to his mind before he takes a buying decision. So I think it is time for us to respond to this situation, not only to them, but to all others. Next slide, please. So from an Indian perspective, as I mentioned, we have been looking at this as a commodity, so far. Now we have to not only meet, the regulations, as what Dr. Schindler mentioned, that both the US and EU are coming out with legislations and trade regulations which will be very severe on the supply chain. I am mentioning severe because the question is, are we ready for them? Because they will change the way how we supply overall to the global textile trade. And just like you see, EU is demanding a due diligence, it is also substantiating that there has to be a green claim as well. So it becomes like quite important for us that how we look at all these regulations from an Indian cotton supply chain point of view, and whether we are able to meet the protocols which are put into place by the US and the EU. Now, from the consumer standpoint, as I mentioned, they also demand ethical, sourcing, and they expect the brands and retailers to deliver not only the value proposition which they buy, but in today's world, they are also looking at how they can contribute towards sustainability, how they can become a part of the mainstream, where they can also contribute to how they can reuse, reduce, or recycle, the way people are looking at in the near future and from a long-term point of view. Now, the cotton, if it is traceable, like as I mentioned, we will have more credibility for our products with the international brand. And not only it will have credibility, but the transparency and visibility across the value chain will also provide us some value addition, wherein we can demand and make and promote, brands. So far, India has not been market-centric on brands development. So it's time for us to emphasize upon the fact how we can add value to our Indian cotton through transparency and visibility of the supply chain, and how we can create further our brand value. And this integrity factor is also there when it comes to through the brands and retailers which they demand. So when they are paying full price, they demand that the product has complete integrity. Next slide, please. Next. So as I mentioned, the brands, that why the verification of origin is also important to the brand, because there is a rapid globalization as we see. We are observing that how Bangladesh and Vietnam has suddenly come up on the textile map. So they are now equivalent to what Indian exports are, and they are challenging worldwide textile space. So we also need to see that how we can provide origin of certificate of origin, where we can substantiate that our raw material can be used elsewhere in globalization. Then there are different locations which are cropping up, which are called offshore, reshore, onshore. So the activities are becoming now much more apparent that people are thinking new ways how they can create value closer to the market. And this will be further amplified, and we all need to think how we can substantiate our supply chain when it comes to onshoring, reshoring, and offshoring. So that is also a challenge which one can address through traceability. Then the traceability also provides us the different value additions, and it also helps us into addressing the supply chain disruptions, because there are in commodity a lot of mismatches in demand and supply worldwide. And this demand and supply has come up that demanding the solution towards commodity, and a lot of emphasis is paid on commodity, how it is looked upon, and suddenly countries are addressing whatever they have in commodity towards the next scale of operation and are demanding a better price or a better valuation. So if we are not ready and if we do not authenticate our supply chain, we will not be able to add value to that and also address the supply chain integrity during disruptions. And as Dr. Schindler also mentioned, that the socio-political and the geopolitical pressures are also there in order to how brands and retailers are looking at traceability in the near future. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, you see the supply chain has to be mapped, and in the value chain, we have to define our supply chain mapping in such a way that we can make that accessible to any agencies where it needs certification. The order management also, which is like will be online in the near future, will demand that how we manage our orders and how we track them and how we make that accessible to the brands and retailers to assess how they can track it from one value chain to the other. Then the product recall also, like many people are calling back their products. So the traceability helps in the product recall also. And the certified product, the claims done by the brands and retailer in their markets are all having different legislations and rules and lands of the law. So if we certify certain product and if we supply them to the brands and retailers, we have to indemnify that we will stand behind it. And that compels us, to see that when we certify this product, there is a complete mapping of the back process so that we can make that transparent to the brands and retailers so he can protect himself in their own market. Next slide, please. So the reason for Indian cotton now to suddenly post this Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Now, this has become a law in the USA, a legislation passed by the federal laws. And the US government as a whole and CBP have made it clear that any business wishing to import into the US must demonstrate thorough, adequate, and required evidence that there are no forces of forced labor in the supply chain. In order to be prepared for the enforcement of this law, all business must conduct due diligence, auditing measures, and supply chain tracing to verify that their supply chains are clean. This now includes isotope and DNA testing in order to verify the order of the imports. It is officially more important than ever that businesses are aware and in control of their supply chain. Now, also somebody questioned me that, isolation, certification, or testing, can it guarantee? So I have to say that testing in isolation cannot guarantee a shipment that it won't be stopped by them. All tests need to be coupled with evidence that no part of your product has been produced using forced labor across the entirety of your supply chain, not just where the raw material was grown. However, not being able to verify the origin of your raw material may increase the likelihood of your shipment being stopped. Just as origin testing in isolation isn't sufficient, neither is verification of the other elements of your supply chain sufficient if you can't verify the source of your raw material. So now this has become an act, and as a matter of fact, has been imposed post June 22. And we all need to awaken to this, and because of this legislation and other retailers, global retailers also demanding that at times India need to produce the certificate of origin for Indian cotton. Texprocil, as usual, has taken a very good initiative to tie up with Control Union, which is the leading certification body with the largest footprint in India. And Texprocil, as we all know, has a large member presence of almost 2,500 members, exporter members all around India. And the GCC, what it is called, is the General Certificate of Conformity, a program to trace and validate Indian farm cotton. The objective is to ensure integrity of Indian textile products across the global value chain. So this initiative has been launched already, and some of the companies have taken benefits of this certification, and this will be an ongoing process, and it will see to it that how we as a country can ensure the certificate of origin for Indian cotton from our side. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the highlights of the GCC program is on the audit, verification and certification of Indian textile, cotton textile product as per global standards. So whatever the global standards and compliances are demanded, that will be included in this certification process. And the key thing is about how the certification or verification is done from the farm to the ginner, because we have around 3,000 plus ginners currently in India. And as we know that, we are yet to have an organized all over, collaboration between the ginners and the spinners going forward. This is an attempt towards bringing them also into the mainstream and see that we identify the certification process till the farm stage. The transaction certificate is issued at the various processing stage, and this will be a play and plug model, which will be very easy to communicate and understand. So we all hope that Indian textile producers take advantage of this GCC program, and they ensure that they can provide this certification of Indian origin of cotton to their counterpart, that are the brands and retailers overseas. Next slide, please. Now, there are some additional tracer technologies in traceability also, which are existing. So in order to create more trust and more application, there are various tracer technologies which are globally being acceptable. And those are forensic as well as additive tracers, which from time to time, this program will assess and analyze and see that wherever applicable, it will take advantage of this methodology to see that how it can ensure further the supply chain traceability and visibility. Next slide, please. So I would summarize that the key takeaways, for the Indian cotton traceability system is that through this, as I mentioned, we can demand a better value-added process and a better margin, or you can say the better pricing from the international market, and create a perceived value for Indian cotton. As what we always mention about cotton is it is a white gold. And certainly we should take advantage of this position worldwide, globally. And the main thing which we have as a differentiation is that we have an established spinning segment to convert this cotton. And it is so versatile that we produce right from the rugs till the finer count, bed sheets, where, we have our own raw material and we have a structure of manufacturing strength, which can, which is ever evolving, modernizing, and people investing into textiles because it offers them both the overseas market as well as the Indian domestic market, which is also growing exponentially. We all say about the dream of $100 billion exports, which we feel that if we grow at a 16% CAGR, we can achieve that in the next 5 years. And if we see 5 years down the line, if India becomes a 5 trillion economy, the textiles sector alone will be worth almost like $300 billion. And we need to see that how towards this process of traceability in the Indian cotton space, if we are able to establish, then we are also addressing on the other side in the areas of sustainability and circularity as well, because those are other regulations which will enforce us to see that how we look upon overall textile operation in the future. So we think that, this is a very good initiative by Texprocil along with Control Union taken toward traceability, and we all need to see that how we can strengthen this system together to make the systematic changes in how we see the textile sector going forward and create value for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lalpuria ji. Thank you very much for quite an insightful presentation. It's quite encouraging to note that in India also we are equally sensitive to the development taking place, and we have started straight away with traceability, which obviously is something of a demand which is coming from the retailers and other brands. And we are also happy, as Mr. Lalpuria mentioned, Texprocil has actively taken up the initiative, and we have put in place a general conformity of certification program where we try to issue certificate by mapping and tracing the origin of cotton that is being used. And this is, of course, at the moment, a voluntary service. Those who would like to have that certificate are happy and more than happy to apply to get it. Now, moving on, sir, we are delighted to have Professor Grease with us. Welcome, Professor Grease. He will make whose bio says that he was born in Cologne, and he's worked at Logi Zimmer AG Frankfurt at the Department of Technologies for Fibers and Textiles in leading positions. He is the director of the Institute for Textile Technique ITA of RWTH Aachen University, and he is a thought leader in 3D and 4D textiles, and he has made ITA the leading institution in digitalization and biotransformation of the textile sector. And he has got some very fascinating things to say about how we, the next generation of the textile industry, in terms of sustainability, digitalization, and individual models is likely to pan out. So welcome, Professor Grease. Now, may I invite you to make your presentation and share your thoughts? Professor Grease, please. Professor Grease? He's coming now.
No, not yet, Professor Grease. No.
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, please
Yes.
come in. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clearly. I made it the conventional way. Sorry.
Okay.
So
Please go ahead.
I will do. Thank you for your kind introduction and giving me the chance to present our research on biotransformation. I know that there in different areas of the world, there are different words for that. I just returned from Japan. They call it green transformation. In America is also, they have different word for the same thing, but I think the main topic is to become more sustainable in our textile industry. And of course, to get away from fossil energy. So let me just step into. The question is quite clear. At the moment, energy prices rise, and this, of course, means also that our raw materials become more expensive. And the question is, how can we go away from that? There's a clear strategy of the EU, but also from other leading countries to become more independent from crude oil. Actually, I will give you an insight that sustainability goes always in hand with digitalization. These are not two topics. These are the main two topics of our generation. And of course, it's interlinked. So you cannot be sustainable without digitalization. And you need for this, as for any transformation, you need business models. And business models are, of course, also a challenge for making new business and new money. I think these pictures you are pretty aware of. When I studied textiles in the 80s, it was 60% nature-based, mainly cotton. This was one reason why I choose textile technology, because it was nature-based. Today, the world population has grown, the textile consumption has grown, and now the picture is opposite round. More than 60% are now crude oil based. And with every year, this picture becomes even worse, because an increase of world population plus an increase of consumption means it cannot be covered by natural fibers. And so the question is, can we turn this around? Are there solutions? And I must say, there will be solutions in any case, because almost every 50 to 70 years, there was a dramatic change from in the raw material base of our industry. It changed from local fibers, 1900, to fibers from colonies, mainly cotton from India and other countries. And then it changed at the end of the previous century to wood-based cellulose fibers, viscose. By the way, the viscose process was developed in Aachen by Bose and Fremery 120 years ago. It changed then in the dawn of the Second World War. Nylon was invented, for example, but this was actually not petrol-based, but coal-based. And then it changed after World War II in the 60s, very much 70s, then to petrol-based chemistry. And the question is now, is there time for a change? Is it because we have talked about more sustainability now more than 2 or 3 decades? I will give you some strategies how you can get away from petrol-based industry. And one is to use more biomass, the bio-based building blocks. And then the second is to use carbon dioxide, which is all around. And the last one is, of course, recycling. And there may be also a fourth one, which is definitely as well for India. I will come to that later. So these are 3 strategies. But it's not alone that we have to exchange the raw material base. We have also developed new processes. When we change the material, we have to develop new business. Education is crucial. And also we need the development of and the evaluation of the environmental impact. And also very important is if we go for natural-based raw materials, then we have also to take natural-based energy, renewable energy. Otherwise, it's only very, very soon discovered as being just a greenwashing. So here already two sectors are combined, the chemical industry or biochemical industry and the energy production. Both have to be renewable in order to make the textile industry in all aspects, clothing and technical textiles, sustainable. There is always this very important pyramid. The main solution to provide overconsumption is prevention. Only 70% of the produced clothes and even less end up at the consumer. So there is an overproduction. And then, of course, we could reuse and recycle. I've recently, by the way, read a very impressive report about textile recycling in India, energy recovery and disposal as the lowest step. I will give you some examples, not to be too theoretical. We have a national flagship project called Biotech Future. It shall showcase what is possible already today in turning our industry away from crude oil-based. And it must be said, this is an open platform project. You can become a member. And the language is, although it is a German-funded project, the language is English. And there are very prominent Indian partners. For example, in the steering committee is Uday Gill from Indorama supporting us. But everybody of you can become members and participate from the information. But there are other projects, BioSC, which is, it must be said that the area between Cologne, Bonn, Aachen is accounts only for 1/8 of the population in Germany, but for 50% of the biotech research. And if you take a closer look to Europe and include Belgium, Netherlands, this actually goes for more than 50% of the biotech research in Europe. So if you're looking for European partners for the biotransformation, please look to our region. Bioformat Pro goes a step further, making materials out of it. And Ingrain is also a very interesting project to take agricultural waste and convert it into materials and food. So a very rich landscape to thrive on. I will give you some examples of it. Acrylonitrile is a very versatile chemistry. It goes, of course, for polyacrylonitrile and for carbon fibers when we look upon that, but it also goes into polyamide 6,6, in polyamide 6. And so it roughly covers as a raw material 20% of the tree of petrochemistry. And the question is, how can we find a solution for acrylonitrile which is not petro-based? And here, this is, I think, a very clever concept because it leads to a drop-in solution. What does it mean? We do not invent new materials and new building blocks. We just take those which we need, but we provide them by a renewable basis. In that case, natural fats. Glycerine is transformed into acrylonitrile, and if it has a certain pureness, then it can be used as a drop-in solution, and the rest of the textile chain, the fiber making, the textile making, has not to be changed. And this is also always a kind of blueprint when we look for new solutions. We always try to get sustainable raw materials which are already known to provide a drop-in solution. Second one is a project which we had together with Covestro, former Bayer company. So here we take the carbon dioxide out of the air. There is a patented technology from Covestro to convert it into polyurethane. And our institute is the exclusive development partner to develop fibers out of it. This project actually was nominated for the German Future Prize, and we have as a demonstrator the SOC. If you're interested in that project, you're invited to contact me. But polyacrylonitrile is also a good example. For a long time, it was said that polyurethane cannot be technically and environmentally recycled. We developed a technology for that. So we take mixed polyacrylonitrile waste, convert it into new PEN recycled pellets, and then make fiber out of it in demonstrators. This process is now technology proven, and there's a new project work on to commercialize this process. And also an example for recycling is, because recycling is not one process, but typically 10 to 12 different processes, and at least 3 stakeholders are involved, as also can be seen in the recycling report of Textiles in India. And this makes development, of course, rather complex, because today you have different blends. Even in apparel, typically you have polycotton, which means cotton plus polyester plus elastane. You have coated textiles and so on. So the solution is always quite complex to find. And here we have opened in June of this year the first creative lab. We call it Recycling Atelier. Companies can come. They have, for example, a big bag, a ton of waste, and together with them, we analyze the waste. We find methods to do the analyze even in industrial processes. We developed solutions, upcycling, reuse, recycling, in different kind, chemical and mechanical, and with embedded in the Institute for Textile Technology. We also can do the prototyping for spinning and weaving, since we have all the relevant processes in-house. And so we develop solutions and also transfer those solutions in industry. We just recently have finished a project with a large discounter, where we took the corporate wear and after end of life, we recycled them to new corporate wear. And this is just one example. And here we develop together with our commercial partner solutions worldwide. And I mentioned the fourth dimension to solve the defossilization is, of course, taking natural fibers. This is an example for Europe. So we take flax and a natural-based resin to make composites out of it. For example, for the surf. This is, of course, a blueprint for projects which can also be done in India, especially where jute is your main endemic fiber. I know that a very strong jute research I've visited already, but there could be a joining of our efforts, because I know the strength of Indian jute research. It can be combined with our strength in composite research in order also to use jute for high performance composites. Yeah, I mentioned in the beginning, sustainability is not only a chemical issue, it goes also hand in hand with digitalization. This is, for example, a result of a project for the home textile industry, so means carpet and upholstery. And in order to make it very efficient recycling, you have to know what is in. And therefore, we developed with our competences in digitalization. Some of you know that we run the first and only model factory industrial digitalization, the DCC in Aachen, together with McKinsey. And based on this competence, actually, we developed in this project a digital passport, where with a certain coding, very easily can be detected what materials are in the product which has to be recycled. So these are rather technical examples. What I always want to point out, if you look into sustainability and digitalization, what you need is cooperation, as we do. Textile technology know-how is not enough, so you have to cooperate. Therefore, we invented the open space platform, TechSpace. Actually, sorry, the announcement here is German, but the language of the TechSpace is English. So you can place your solution, and you can place your problem, and you probably get many solutions. So it's an open innovation platform, like you probably know from Six Sigma and others, where you can place your questions and get answers, or place answers and get people who have problems. It's a matchmaking platform. We were at the ITMF, and this, I think, was one reason for being invited here, and supported Christian Schindler also in the startup area. We did this as well as for the Man-Made Fiber Global Fiber Conference in Dornbirn, and we will do this at the Textile Conference in Aachen, which is beginning of December. And please feel invited to come to Aachen. It's an international textile conference, and it's the place where textile innovation of Europe is going to meet. And for those of you which are on the sweet side, it's also the opening of the Aachen Christmas market, and you can buy a lot of chocolates taking home and make your family happy. Yeah, cooperation means also that we cooperate in different form. We not only develop something for our in R&D contracts, but we have, as I mentioned, the textile atelier. We have the DCC, which is the first model factory and learning factory for digitalization, and the recycling atelier as well is a platform owned by two owners, one who has the idea, one who has the money, and then there are partners, industrial partners, which work together. In the DCC, there in the recycling atelier, there are roughly 25 industry partners, which also guarantee that these model factories have always the latest equipment and in soft and hardware. Business models. Digitalization and sustainability will bring textile production on the one hand back to high-wage countries like Middle Europe, but will bring also textile production back into the cities, because in order to save logistic costs and energy. And as a model case to showcase the world what is possible, we have started a project called T7, which is the Textile Technology Park of the Future. It's the name 7 comes from it's bio-based, it's mass customized, it is smart textiles, and it's microfactories together with digitalization, sustainability, and automation. So this comes to 7, and there will be a new techno park in Mönchengladbach, close to Düsseldorf. Some of you know Mönchengladbach because a lot of Indian textile engineers have studied their textile technology. And here, all business models can really be practiced in the main and part of European population, Rhine-Ruhr area. And you can work here with collaborative space, with open labs, with joint ventures, or your own company. For example, C&A, one of the largest European retailer, has started to produce jeans and chino in Mönchengladbach, which is a high-wage country. This is not economies of scale, this is economies of value, and you can practice it there. And maybe we can also talk about how to transfer this role model to the Indian textile industry. Just to say, I will be in India beginning of December for the ITME. I'm an invited speaker in several sections. And around the ITME, I will be another week in India traveling around. And if you want to meet me and my team, please feel free to contact you. And then we can, of course, a much deeper and much more individual discussion as I can give you today. So thank you very much for your attention. And of course, one last thing is microfactories, how to produce in the city. And these microfactories, we have done the speed factory for Adidas, means that it is totally digital interlinked. It can produce a highly individual product. And of course, it has to have a very attractive user interface. We did the machine design. We did the demonstration of agile garment production in the city, and we connected with the customer. And think here our institute can provide not only sustainable solution in means of the fiber material, but the entire textile production chain. So we, as an institute, provide not only new technology, but also the scale up and also the value chain creation to really gain turnover and EBIT out of innovation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Grease, for your very insightful presentation. I think there are a lot of concepts we probably need to follow up with you when you come to India in December.
Yeah.
And we are also happy to know that you are sort of strengthening your presence in India.
Yeah.
You signed we heard that you entered into an agreement with one of our consulting firms, Wazir Industry. That's what was in the newspapers. And
That's
I think
right.
you also have an office in India. So surely I think our members and some of us will try to reach out to you when you visit India in December. Thank you very much for this insightful presentation.
Welcome.
Now,
Thank you
moving
for
on,
inviting me.
may I invite Mr. Marcelo Duarte from Brazil, who of course is currently located in Singapore, therefore he is ahead in time in India. He is specialized in agribusiness, has extensive knowledge of all the main stages of agricultural production chains, from foreign trade financing to production, logistics, marketing, and applied ESG. Mr. Marcelo has been living in Singapore and is also the director of the international relations for ABRAPA, the Brazilian Cotton Growers Association. And that's how we got to know him, through the ITMF, Dr. Schindler. Marcelo holds a master's degree in agricultural commerce from the Lincoln University in New Zealand and an MBA from the Getulio Vargas Foundation, FGV, and has graduated in business administration from the Mato Grosso Federal University. He has completed an agribusiness course at Harvard University and also a visiting scholar at the University of Illinois, where he has been a board member of an agribusiness think tank connected to the university since 2012. So welcome to you, Mr. Marcelo. It's a pleasure having you here, even though it's getting a little late in Singapore as well as in India. We look forward to some of your views on this fascinating subject of sustainability, circularity, and traceability in the textile industry. Mr. Marcelo, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rajagopal. It was Dr. Rajagopal. It was, first of all, I would like to congratulate Texprocil for its 68th Foundation Day. It's really an honor to me to be joining this webinar, and I, as soon as I got the invitation, I was accepted right away, since I consider, India a country that we have a lot to learn from. I admire a lot your country. I've been there only once, and hopefully now with the traveling resuming again, I'll be able to be there more often. That's the reason why I'm here in Singapore, to be closer to our markets, more to the Asian continent. And I understand India is certainly looking at expanding its textile industry. Therefore, I think Brazil might play a role in some parts of the year and some years exporting cotton to India to specific needs, and that's what we'll be talking about today. I would like to also to compliment Honorable Secretary of the Ministry of Textiles, Mr. Upendra Singh, and also dear friends and honorable speakers. I'll share my presentation right now.
Yeah, Kaduna, bhaiya.
You got it, right? Okay, is it full screen? No, right now. I think it's gonna be. Please just allow me. Is this full screen now?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. So the topic today is sustainability as a mainstream strategy. The case of cotton Brazil. This is, I mean, a story that we are very proud of in Brazil and how we made a big turnaround in our cotton sector in the last decades. And this and how sustainability and how certification played such an important role in the way we did it and the way we're still doing and managing cotton production in Brazil. First of all, I mean, this is what Brazil's cotton production used to be in the past until the early 1990s. So there was very small farms, very small scale, no technology, lots of labor, poor management, and most of the production was located in the west, in the east part of the country by the coast. And at that time, production started to decline, and then it reached the bottom in 1996 when Brazil became, at that time, the second largest cotton importer in the world. Everything changed from the late 90s. Production became more specialized, more professional. Farmers got bigger. They moved to the west, and the high technology of seeds, technology of ginning became really a key driver of this change. And since 2018-19, Brazil became and still is second largest cotton world's cotton exporter of the world. And how did this happen? I mean, what were the drivers between this change? I mean, I think I could definitely point to three drivers. First one, production and ginning efficiency. A lot of people that see this presentation or talk to me and they go, okay, but this all happened because of deforestation, because of your opening new farms, new land, and that's really not the case. If you see it, these graphs here, you'll notice that in 76, Brazil, the total cotton area in Brazil was more than 4 million hectares. And last year it was 1.6 million. And out of that, only 40% only dedicated to cotton. 60% was double cropping the same year, soybeans and cotton. So a 61% increase. So in this last, say, 4 decades, so 61% decrease in area and more than 1,000% increase in yield. So this is really the big change in picture. And of course, I mean, they all came with quality improvement. I mean, cotton fiber is getting better and better each year when it comes to length, strength, mic, and also, and finally, innovation leadership. I mean, the industry is very small when you compare it to India. For example, in terms of number of farmers, we'll talk about 300 to 400 farmers. So it's a very small industry. So you can have everybody in a single room. So decisions happen quite fast. And one of the decisions that were taken in the past that really changed was the ABR certification and traceability. And I'll talk about how this was important and why it changed and helped Brazil move up the ladder in cotton production efficiency. So what's ABR? ABR is the Brazilian certification protocol. It's managed by Abrapa. So we have a team that manages the certification. Main focus originally was compliance to Brazilian and environmental and labor legislation. That was really the main goal in the beginning. We have a very complex, tsunami of regulations that we were talking today. This is crazy when you look at the field, especially if you put from a farmer's perspective. And a third point is that it involves yearly on-farm diligences. So farms are visited yearly by the auditors. The auditors are third-party auditors, so we're not talking about Abrapa manages the system, but there are third-party audit firms that are hired to do the audits. It's cotton specific, but certificates the entire farm, not only cotton fields. It focuses on environmental, social, and economic aspects, and has continuous improvement as a principle. So this is really the key points of ABR. These are the timeline of ABR. And if you look at the timeline in blue, you see in the bottom that its growth it's very in line with the growth that Brazil had in market share in the world and in international market. So in the beginning, when it started in 2005, so Brazil's world export share was only 4%. Now it's reached 20% at the same time that ABR reaches 84% of Brazil's total production. So pretty much, every single bale that we export is ABR certified. And since 2013, as you can see in this timeline, BCI started to be licensed under Abrapa's ABR protocol, which means they're equivalent protocols. So if you get ABR, automatically farmers are eligible to get BCI credits as well. And if we look at the global picture of preferred cotton fiber, including organic, fair trade, and other certifications, you notice that ABR share of total organic or total preferred cotton production is 37%, which is impressive if you consider that only 11% of Brazil only represents 11% of the total cotton production. So this ABR is very complex. It's not a simple standard. It involves 183 checklist items, which are comprised of 132 exclusive ABR plus 51 items, which are both ABR and BCI. So that's the total. So that's why, when you get BCI, ABR, you're also entitled to BCI as a farmer. Because they are all they were all put together in one single checklist. So who is responsible for who? And Abrapa is responsible for the light blue areas of the pizza here. So we are responsible for point number one, outreach and assessment of the farmers. When farmers decide to join, we do the advisory. We help them to improve their systems, improve their methods, improve their management. And then once they're ready, there's a certification body that comes, the third party, and does the verification and certification. And then Abrapa manages the database. And finally, farmers can get a better cotton license, which is optional. Also, it's important to say that the benefits that ABR bring to the environment are quite significant. If you look, for example, in terms of conservation, every farm in Brazil needs to have a percentage of it preserved. So in this case, 35% of every farm in this region needs to be preserved. It can go up to 80% if you are close to the Amazon region. Only the remaining can be farmed. So if farmers are ABR, it means they're preserving more because they are fully complying with national legislation. Also, ABR looks after environment, irrigation water use. So farmers are only entitled to use irrigation water if they're fully complying with the laws and regulations. So that puts our water use in a very low level if compared to world average. So we use 99% less than the world average water footprint as compared to other regions. Of course, because we also are blessed, I would say, with natural rain throughout the most producing regions in the country. Also, when you look at carbon footprint, the results are also impressive. If you consider the world average, this is a BCI study of almost 3 tons of carbon emissions per ton of cotton lint produced. I mean, Brazilian average is 2, and the ABR farm level is 1.7. And this is considering all the emissions, including emissions from pesticide and fertilizer production, which accounts for more than 60% of total of the total footprint of cotton production. Farmers are also, I mean, they're also happy. I mean, that's really a key point of the system. It's not only about, you know, making good for the environment. If farmers are not happy, if things, I mean, this is not going to work. So one of the reasons why ABR is really increasing year after year, now reaching almost 90% of total production, is because it makes a lot of sense from economic point of view for farmers. They see benefits. They see more results, more yield, more market access. They have access to less interest rate credit lines. They also they also have high yields as according to our studies than average farmers. Employee satisfaction. So our farmers, they employ a lot of people. They have employers, so employees are happy. They got higher wages, 100% compliance with legislation, more controls management, better soil health, land use and water efficiency, and lower use of inputs. These are all benefits to farmers. And how do I identify ABR cotton? So in Brazil, more than 90% of ginning happens on farm. So farmers, they have their gin in their farms. So that's a big difference from most countries around the world. So that makes it very easy to trace where cotton is coming from. So now we are using RFID and geo tagging technologies to trace the plot where it came from, but the farm is where normally it's gin. So every cotton bale has a sticker stating alongside the sticker that the bale identification number, the sticker that states whether the cotton was that cotton is certified, comes from a certified farm, and what was the certification body, and other details as well. You can also check online. So there we have an online web page, cottonbrazil.com/certified farms. And so buyers can go online and can check whether that farm in that specific season is certified or not. And finally, also, if from this year, every cotton bale is coming from with a bale tag with a QR code. So bale tag we have been using this bale tag for more than a decade, for more than 15 years, if I'm not wrong. But now from this year, we are using QR codes. So if you're using a mobile, so you can scan, for example, this QR code in the screen and find out where the cotton came from, whether it's certified or not, whether it has BCI, and also all the HVI data from that specific bale. And now we're moving forward. I mean, the idea is really to go from farm to fashion. We are doing some pilots with some spinning companies and weaving companies, and also the largest cotton retailer, garment retailer in Brazil is called Renner. The red brand there. So we are offering, we are working with some products over Renner that are offering full traceability, physical traceability. So the buyer, if you use that, this is a QR code of real jeans, denim, and buyer can scan, the customers can scan, can find out exactly where it came from, who the farmer is. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, it's in Portuguese. So because so far we only focus on the domestic market. And finally, I just want to say that physical, I mean, traceability for us is, it's, I think for everyone, it's a big journey. I think we're in the beginning. Sustainability and traceability, and I agree with Professor Thomas that this is also has to do with digitization. It's a big journey. We know that we need to move forward. We need to change. We need to continue changing, and hopefully we'll be able to exchange information, learn from each other, because in the end we are all in the same boat. We are all in the same industry, and we want cotton to grow, and everybody. And definitely take some of the space we have been losing to synthetic fibers in the last decades. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maslow, for a very exhaustive, and I mean, I must say something which in India we are trying to follow. You know, you've really been able to trace the cotton from farm to fashion to the retail, and I think you've put in very modern and tools in place. And really, Abrapa has done excellent work, and we also saw how your productivity has increased, something which we are also dreaming of in this country, of taking our productivity of cotton on the farm to doubling it, if not tripling it from the current levels. Anyway, very, very informative. Now we come to the question and answer session. Of course, it's almost the faggot of the day in India, but nevertheless, we're happy to see that people are still joined in with us. So some questions, of course, have been asked and answered in the chat box. I must say our Textile Commissioner, Madam Roop Rashi, has been quite active, and her office has also been proposing questions and comments. Any other queries and questions that we may have, I'm more than happy to address it. Of course, only thing I would like to say is that Dr. Srinivasan has left, but today is also one of the most religious days in India, you know. So therefore, we are tomorrow having what is called the Dasera, which is the final day of a 10-day celebration. So anyway, but some of us are still here. The Textile Commissioner is very much here. Any questions our members have? Anything in the chat box that is left unanswered?
I have a small question, if you can permit.
Yeah, please introduce yourself.
I'm Ripple Patel. I am
Yes, please go ahead.
Biotech Cellulose.
Yeah.
My question is, as we are promoting more sustainability, my simple question is, does sustainability means more costlier and more value to the cost?
Who would like to take that question? Dr. Schindler, what is your experience say?
I can take a take, but I would invite Professor Gries if he is available. Well, I think there are many examples. There was a study, and maybe you will add on this, Professor Gries, by McKinsey, regarding how the textile industry can contribute to a more sustainable production of textiles. And many of the measures they proposed were actually cost reducing. Actually, a majority of measures were cost reducing measures, and only a smaller part would actually lead to higher costs. When it comes to new innovative products or materials, in the beginning, probably costs are higher, but eventually when things are scaled up, they will again come down to a competitive level. So I would like to refer to this McKinsey study, and secondly would invite Professor Gries to also comment on costs regarding more sustainable production methods.
Professor Gries, you have micro factory production. Is it expensive to set one up like that? Are you there with us, Professor Gries?
We can't hear you, Professor Grease. No.
Here I am.
Now. Yes.
Generally, there are different sources. So McKinsey said when we do recycling, for example, it could lead to 5 to 10% more costs. I always say I'm a little bit more critical, because if you do recycling, if you go for sustainable raw materials, you might end up with higher prices. And I always like scenarios. So it means of fiber price and production, probably you might get more expensive, maybe double, yeah, maybe triple, I do not know. But you have to see the entire value chain. So for example, a shirt like I'm wearing here costs in the shop in Germany 50 euros. The production of the shirt costs €2.50. You can produce it for 10 euros in Europe when you directly link to the customer. If you avoid large logistic costs, if you avoid, for example, overproduction, then you're almost in. So at the end of the day, I'm not sure whether the customer is willing to pay more than 50% of a good business shirt. So you have to meet certain price categories, which are of course different in different countries. But the main thing when it goes to the interlink with digitalization is you have to consider the entire value chain. And typically 90% of the non-textile profit is in the value chain. So even if you produce for higher costs, then you can still meet you have to meet the customer price segments. And this is why I said it's not only a biotransformation, let's also say it's a transformation from cost to value. You have to see how can I get the value which I need for my costs.
Well, I think well put, sir. Well said. I think that, yes. Any other question? If there are no other questions, then can we move on? And may I request Madam Roop Rashi, our Textile Commissioner, who I must say, we are very grateful to you, Madam. You stayed throughout with us in the program, and she's very enthusiastic and passionate about this subject. In our own interactions offline, we have seen how much he is keen that the industry in India, textile industry in India, understands these concepts, follows up on it, and tries to adopt and adapt. So, ma'am, valedictory remarks from you. And once again, thank you so much for staying with us.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, everybody. I am thankful to Christian Sindler, Mr. Christian Sindler, Mr. Marcelo, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Lalpuriaji, and Mr. Srinivasan, who have enlightened us on the various aspects which impinge on humanity at large, revolving around sustainability, circularity, and traceability. Enough has been said, but not enough has been done across the world, and we need to keep doing as much as possible on all these three important aspects. My questions, which I kept posting because I didn't want to hold up people later, relate to that we need to do modeling, which would be relatively specific to origins like ours, what are our core concerns when we are looking at sustainability, instead of just importing a model which would be maybe useful for a different reality where investments are flowing into the different infrastructure. But I am really, really thankful, and I am sure I am speaking for all of us who are present here, that you have again been able to put all the core concerns in perspective for us all. And we look forward to your guiding presence and look forward to connecting with all of you when you are in India, so that our various stakeholders can take a leaf out of whatever you have been doing on the three critical issues of sustainability, circularity, and traceability, because it is not only what would be the various regulations We need to align ourselves to the principles because it concerns humanity at large, and we represent a very, very big segment of that humanity in India. So I would thank Siddharth for involving me in this. I feel enriched, and I would apologize to Christian for all the questions I keep kept throwing through the chat box. But ignore it as a question, but then which if you feel was more out of ignorance. But I just feel that we need to get little more incisive, and we need to model it to our reality. And we can't, like for me, I feel the core concern here would be water consumption more than, we have enough research, but I see a lot of reservation in, or because of lack of fund availability to utilize it for conserving the water component part of it. So recycling is important, but then maybe some other aspects of sustainability as an enterprise need to be looked at when it comes to India. Once again, I'd like to wish all of you happy Dussehra, and my gratitude to all who are present here in different time zones to be with us on this momentous occasion of the 68th anniversary of our Texprocil, which has remained the best connect for our textile exports, especially cotton textile exports to the international community. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So very words of encouragement, Madam Commu, and your questions in the chat box only show the kind of commitment and passion you have for the subject. So we'll take it forward as we go along. With these few words, can I invite Chairman to sum up the discussions and have the last word?
Thank you. It is indeed a great pleasure to thank our chief guest, Shupendra Prasad Singh Ji, Textile Secretary, who unfortunately had to leave a little early, Madam Roop Rashi Ji, Textile Commissioner, Dr. Christian Schindler, Director General ITMF, Professor Thomas Gries, ITA Aachen, Mr. Marcelo Duarte, Director of International Relations at Abrapa, Dr. KV Srinivasan, Managing Director of Premier Mills and Vice President ITMF, Mr. KK Lalpuria, Executive Director and CEO Indo-Count Industries, for sparing their valuable time and across time zones and to offer their valuable thoughts and insights on one of the most discussed topics of our times. The knowledge session on sustainability, circularity, and traceability held on the Council's Foundation Day was a very compelling one. I'm confident that the audience have absorbed every bit of the information shared and will leave with a greater sense of purpose in terms of future course of action on this subject. The need for sustainability, circularity, and traceability cannot be stressed more. I also draw attention to the fact how these terms and their reference and meanings change over time. Sustainability started with only carbon footprint, and today we are looking at it in a much wider sense. Similarly, circularity, we have been only focusing on probably processing or reprocessing waste. But we have seen in today's presentation on the amount of importance and scope for reuse, secondhand clothing, renting of clothes, etc. And the origin of the issue before us is also not far to see. Like, for example, in Dr. Schindler's presentation, when he showed how the fiber consumption has grown, if you would notice, the cotton consumption has remained the same in the last 50 years or 40 years, whereas polyester has grown multi-fold. So this has helped us to clothe humanity. But it brings us to the other side of the coin, which is what do we do with the clothes after they are used? Presently, all this seems to be going to landfill and incineration. So this is why we have this opportunity of recycling, reusing this huge mass. The importance of sustainability, circularity, and traceability for all industries and textile sector in particular cannot be overstated. In today's age, where even the common man talks with some sense of authority, it is imperative for the stakeholders across the value chain in the textile industry to imbibe these attributes in every area of their operations. Products and processes that adhere to these philosophies will stand the test of time. And the only road available to all manufacturers and exporters to sustainable success for Indian companies is to adopt these principles in letter and spirit. To begin with, these processes look like they're adding to cost. But as we go along, size, scale, and development will probably bring the cost down. I once again thank the esteemed guests and the distinguished speakers for having made the Council's Foundation Day a truly special and memorable one. I also thank all the participants for joining in and partaking of this huge amount of knowledge. Thank you, everybody. A good evening to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. With these few words, thank you very much, all our participants, all our guests. Really appreciate Madam Textile Commissioner, and also Secretary Textiles had to leave in between. We already had a meeting at 5:30 Indian time, but he sent me a message saying that he appreciated this program. So thanks to all of you today on a festive day in India. As Madam said, the Dussehra is a big festival tomorrow in India. So wishing everybody a happy Dussehra and happy sustainable living, as they say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I put a link in the chat box for anyone about.
Yeah, thank you very much. We saw that.
McKinsey study.
So kind of you. So nice of you. We'll circulate it and everybody can have a look at that. Thank you very much, Dr. Schindler.
Thank you,
As
everyone.
always, you've been a
Thank you,
great help.
Marcelo. Best regards.
Yeah.
Also to Professor Grease. Bye-bye.
Professor Grease, thank you very much
Thank you.
for finding time for us. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Bye-bye.